very warm welcome to you all, and I'm really grateful for you to join us this afternoon for this very special occasion. This is Charting the Course. It's going to be a live debate about what it's like to live in the cloud of digital transformation in higher education. I'm Lethan Green, I'm the Executive Director at Oracle, and I'm going to be joined today by some very special guests as I sit here on this sofa, which I've now christened the Namos sofa, with my good buddy, Richard from Namos Solutions, and Rich will introduce himself in a moment. And this afternoon, I've had the opportunity to kind of take some time to wander around Greenwich University. This is my first time that I've been here, and it's a really stunning place, an inspirational place, experiencing the vibrancy of student life and kind of feeling that mixture of old and new coming together. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing where this debate takes us. So to begin with, I'm just going to ask Richard to introduce himself and our very special guests.
Thank you, Lethan. So, as Lethan said, really pleased to be joining you this afternoon. I'm Rich Clayton, I'm COO of Namos Solutions. But far more importantly, we have our brilliant panel. So starting with Kirsty.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kirsty Goulding. I am the Interim Deputy Director of People here at the University of Greenwich. Great to be here.
And Emma.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Emma Leeming. I'm the Programme Director for the ERP Great Service Programme at Imperial College London, and it's wonderful to be here today.
And last but not least, Di.
Hi, everybody. I'm Di Capstick. I'm the Head of HR Transformation at the University of Salford. Thank you.
So let's just give you a little bit of context in terms of what the debate's all about. And for me, the important thing when we're talking about digital transformation is that connection of people. You know, these are first and foremost people and change programs. And, you know, trying to get that focus in organizations so that we've got clarity of ambition. You know, where is it that we're trying to go to? Have you got that compelling vision of the future, the ambition for the future for your institution? Without that, it's really difficult, isn't it, to kind of understand how technology is going to be able to drive that and deliver it. So that's what we're going to focus on to begin with. We're also going to look at the significance, the importance of around resourcing. You know, resourcing is not just about having money to be able to do these things, but also the right people, the right skill, making sure that you have those right through the life cycle of the project, because often we kind of get to the point of kind of go live with that implementation and just take a deep intake of breath and think, gosh, that's kind of job done. However, you know, let's bust the myth, and that's just the start of your journey. So let's, you know, hear what our guests have got to say about that experience. And in this space today, we've got three very different journeys, which is going to really help us understand the significance of each of those stages. So from Greenwich, we'll hear what it's like to operate in the cloud. You know, they've been there for, I don't know, it kind of feels a little bit weird saying that, doesn't it? Life in the cloud. What is it like being there? You know, it's a very different mindset shift, an operational shift, behavioral shift, not just for the professionals who are using the technology on a day-to-day basis, but also for the organization and the institution. Then we've got an experience from Salford University who have just gone live. So it's kind of, you know, what is it like kind of having gone through that process of implementation, getting prepared for this journey into the cloud? And again, a very different shift. And then finally, we've got a brilliant kind of opportunity to hear firsthand from Imperial College, who are in the thick of preparing for their implementation. So this kind of 3D effect of life, the life cycle of the journey from start to kind of go live and beyond, is what we're going to be exploring today. So without any further ado, Richard, let's kick it off.
Let's do so. So it's a perfect segue. Where you say about getting all of those moving parts to come together, it can't happen in splendid isolation. To get the backing of the institution to, let's face it, because of the size of the opportunity, to disrupt for a period of time, which I know from personal experience in HE is never an undertaking done lightly. There is a level of risk aversion. And I suppose my first question there, Kirsty, to you, as someone who's been on that journey and now through the other side. I was going to go through the looking glass then. How did Greenwich get that compelling event, that alignment of all the relevant people to say, we've got a business case here that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, let's seize it together?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So for us, it was really a culmination of ambition, and necessity. And it brought together Greenwich's drive to be the best modern university by 2030. And it really spoke to three key what we call enabling strategies. And that was obviously our digital transformation, so our digital strategy, our people enabling strategy, and our green sustainability principles at Greenwich and the strategy that underpinned that. And an executive led by a Vice-Chancellor that's absolutely committed to the best student experience that we could deliver. And that, of course, is underpinned by a great infrastructure that the cloud could provide us that, talk to these different strategies around how do we best enable our people to do their best in terms of things like management, decision-making through really great information that we could get from the product. How do we enable self-service so that our staff can engage with the system on a day-to-day basis and reduce our carbon footprint, and how do we digitalise our approach in terms of speaking to the future and what we need in that kind of infrastructure. So the business case was a culmination of all of that, and the evidence basis for it was compelling in terms of return on investment, enablement, and fundamentally how we give our staff a great experience and therefore fundamentally our students, which is what we're about. So it was a really straightforward conversation that was very well supported by the top.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
So when we talk about digital transformation, is this something which is kind of just a fancy title for a technology project, or do we really, how do we really get under the skin to actually demonstrate across that organisation that the breadth and depth of change that's required to actually make this effective?
Okay, so I think it's much more than a kind of systems enablement, isn't it? It's a whole piece around culture change, transformation of ways of thinking and working. And we were really ambitious in that we delivered HCM, sorry, get my acronyms correct. We delivered HCM within 7 months. We built payroll on top of that. And then we went to look at expenses and starting to look at APM and finance. So we were using these building blocks to help us in terms of realising some of our strategic drives and ambitions to deliver what we need to for our staff and our students. So I think that that was the start of a kind of a programme where we're now looking at more self-service. We use artificial intelligence that complements the work we do around appraisals, for example. We have the learning module. We're busy working on case management, which means that we can give lots of people metrics that allow for better information and decision-making at a strategic level. So all of that kind of building has helped us transform the way in which we think about systems and people and sustainability and how they connect really quite easily together. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's certainly kind of...
No, it does perfectly. And at the beginning, I gave the introduction that you've been operating in this space for a number of years. And how have you managed to go around ensuring that you maintain the resources to kind of drive that continuous innovation?
I think, again, it speaks to that kind of key ambition. For us. It's not a difficult evidence to prove the kind of return on investment for this, in that the reduction in the need for the kind of paper, for example, the management decisions that help us to make better strategic, take better strategic actions, because we're able to say, this is what our staffing complement looks like now, this is what it might need to look like in the future, those kind of things. So I'm not sure it's ever been a conversation that we've stopped having. And what we have to continue doing is to keep engaging our leaders and our managers in terms of the continuation of the transformation of the system that we're using, the systems we're kind of bringing together, and also making sure that we are talking to our colleagues across the organisation about, well, what does this mean for you? How does this enable you as a recruiting manager to do something more in a more streamlined way? How does this enable you as a member of staff to make sure we've got all the relevant details we need about you, so that if you need some support from us as an employer, that we've got the information that we need to help and support you from a well-being perspective, that kind of thing. So it all speaks to that kind of positive way of working holistically, and it joins the dots. And it's never been difficult to continue to see the investment and that return. And we have a plan for the next phase of development and what that will speak to in terms of further developments in finance. We've added procurement, for example, which again, if you're out to tender for a particular service, it allows you to see what you're looking at. It allows you to see where we're adding value, where we can challenge decision making. So it allows us to have more robust conversations. We are looking at enabling our onboarding and recruitment and joining that all together. So it's not a difficult conversation to continue having, and it speaks to those strategic goals.
So Di, just moving on to the subject slightly into that kind of cultural space. Culture change is always really kind of challenging to pick up, and especially that conversation between the enabling functions and perhaps the academic world. So how have you gone about trying to ensure that there's kind of connection across all parts of the university community?
It's not an easy journey. As a university at Salford, we went from having, booking your holiday on a postcard and a wet signature to moving into kind of fully automated self-service. So it's a very different way of working. And kind of just go back to your original question with Christy, it isn't just a system, it is a complete and utter change of how you're operating. And I think the way we kind of tailored it was to make sure that we had that two-way communication with all our kind of key groups around the organisation from the get-go. There was a lot of, this is coming, this is the benefits, this is what you do now, this is what you'll do in the future, and look how easy that is, and really doing some show and tell to get those groups on board. So it takes a lot of planning and a lot of energy, and I think it's certainly something that you have to build into your plans right at the start, because it isn't just a technical implementation, it is a whole change and engagement activity for the whole organisation.
And did you experience any kind of pushback from your senior community in terms of the time that's needed to engage with them and the ability to be able to have these debates at the senior table?
No, not really. I think everybody was very committed to the change. I think because we'd come from such a place of manual processing, there was a lot of frustration out in the organisation across all groups, professional services and academia, around the amount of time they're wasting in double handling things and manual entry and kind of throwing information into a black hole and hoping you get the right outcome. So the sell was quite an easy one. I think it's just that change in ways of working that was more difficult. It took a lot more conversation and a lot more explanation. Like you said at the start, kind of really selling the vision and that postcard from the future as to how things are going to look and feel. Yeah, we came from quite a low point. So the sell was quite simple with something like Oracle.
So how far have you kind of progressed on that journey towards kind of a better world for your employers and students?
Well, you move at pace, and I think that's the thing to really get your head around with Oracle is that, you go live and it's like, oh, okay, we've gone live, but then you're into release management and quarterly releases, and there's all new functionality and developments coming out. So, even now, 6 months post go live, we're starting to talk about how we can use AI agents and all different kinds of functionality, how we can switch on new modules that we haven't kind of got into from the point of go live. So it's a constant, and I think that again is a different mindset as an organisation to get into, coming from a place where you might have had a system that you patched once a year and it kind of sits there.
Yeah, I think the world of AI agents is going to be a brilliant opportunity for us to have another debate as well, isn't it? It's going to completely liberate the world of work and how we do work, how that's shaped. Completely. So from your point of view, Emma, you're right in the thick of it, aren't you?
Just a little bit, yes.
So kind of keeping that momentum going in terms of, organisation engagement right across, your workforce. How are you doing that, and how are you ensuring that it's not, again, just viewed as a new piece of technology coming in, but really going to liberate the way that you're doing work across the university?
Yeah, I think we're doing it in as many different ways as possible is the short answer. Yeah. So as you were describing, we've been actively engaging right from the outset, talking to various different groups as we go. And it's quite an interesting thing. So we've taken a very open view with this. Let's be transparent. Let's show as much of the system as we can, as humanly possible. So we've really taken advantage of Success Navigator and demoing early and using that as part of our engagements. We've absolutely opened up kind of walkthroughs of prototypes to vast numbers of the organisation quite early on. And that's because we wanted to make sure that we were getting the right spread across the organisation. So there's always this little bit of tension, isn't there, around managing expectations and what point you show certain aspects of the solution or what it's going to look like. We've taken the view that actually we want to show as much early, even if it changes and evolves, just in a kind of very honest, transparent way with the organisation. So we've established mechanisms with our academics, and what we found with our academics is the more you can get into specifics and things that are specific and design related rather than programmatic, actually you start to get a real sense of interest. And so we've really used that as part of a conversation rather than just a tell. I think quite often the fallback position is communicate. Well, you can communicate that theoretical vision, and actually that theoretical vision can be brought in really strongly by the organisation. But we're at that interesting tipping point when everyone wants to know, but what does it mean for me? Like, you're saying these things, but I don't really know what you're talking about. It's not clear. And so we've tried really, really hard to open it up, share as many demos, share as many opportunities to engage with the solution, and also to engage with the SMEs seconded onto the programme. So they are out there talking to people, really trying to articulate what that change is and what it means for people. And I think our challenge sort of midway through is going to be twofold. I think we are going to be combating with what people think the right answer should be, their expectations, and they'll forget that actually our starting point was really, really low and this is going to be better. But because it's not what they have in their mind, it might not be quite perfect. So that's something I think we're going to have to wrestle with as we go through the process. And I think the second thing that we found is because we've created a lot of momentum and a lot of engagement relatively early on in the programme, we're in system integration testing at the moment. What that means is the organisation is hungry. So it's how do we keep pace with that next level of detail? So we're having to accelerate certain activities like end-to-end processes and change impact assessments, because we need to keep pace with that hunger within the organisation. How this will land, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm kind of excited. And I think what we're trying to do is just kind of stay close to the groups and respond. So if they want more, we'll give them more. If they need something different, then we'll work with that. It has to be a conversation, and it has to be less about tell and more about listen and respond to. So that's how we're sort of approaching it at the moment. So watch this space.
Yeah, some great insights there, especially about engaging people and showing people as early as possible, as much as possible. You know, and often we'll see resistance against that when really you've got to embrace it and move into it. And answering those two killer questions, which you've been doing brilliantly well through your implementation. What's in it for me and why should I care for different communities? And being as granular as possible and bringing it to life and kind of showing this is the future of the world. Imagine this is now going to be a reality for you, because it's no longer a kind of future what if scenario with technology, is it? It's here and it's live for you.
And we're being really honest about where it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So we know there are certain aspects that are going to land that aren't quite as nice as what they currently have, because we're moving off of certain more specialist systems onto the ERP in certain instances. Just full transparency, just say it as it is, just be straightforward. I think people want that honesty and that transparency.
Yeah. And these are big people projects. And people are big, squidgy, emotional creatures, aren't they? And if only things...
I'm squidgy and emotional, thank you. So yes, I can understand that.
Yeah, it would be sweet if we weren't. But of course, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over to you, Richard.
I think that's a perfect segue from... You were talking about, Emma, that managing expectations during the programme. And that's making sure, as you say, you're giving a smoother landing with expectations all set accordingly. But that... There was a brilliant outtake saying about the go live is just the beginning. Yeah. You know, that's day one. We haven't realised any benefit on the first minute. It's from there on. And I suppose, Di, to yourself, have been first 6 months of go live. How do you carry on managing those expectations in that you want to be on a continual improvement cycle? And Salford have been brilliant at saying, this is our stabilization period into this is continual improvement. But I'm sure you've got stakeholders that are champing at the bit to say, our turn next, we want, wouldn't it be great if... So how do you manage that?
We absolutely have. And there's different groups. We've got some that, like you say, are desperate to kind of do the next thing, and others that are, you know, still keeping up with the basics that we've kind of gone live with. I guess the answer is you don't really get a choice as to whether you keep pushing forward or not, because you're getting those quarterly releases and that new functionality is constantly being dripped through. And I think it's really important to keep, you know, we built a lot of two-way communication channels during the implementation, which we assumed we would kind of close down once we went live. They're still open. So we've still got lots of channels where, you know, our change champion community that we used during go live still kind of get in touch. We still give them updates around this is coming, this is what it means for your areas. And then they can kind of take that back into their schools, their departments, and speak to their colleagues in a language that they understand about what's coming next. But I think the beauty of it is it's constantly improving. And, you know, little things. We had a forum not long ago where somebody had made a comment around, oh, you know, it's quite a few clicks to get to the area that I want to get to. And we were able to talk to, you know, the new homepage that's coming in future release, where you can just ask a question and it will answer. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's great. Thank you. So it's keeping on top of what's coming in the upcoming releases and sharing where you've had feedback from people kind of questioning or challenging, saying, well, this is how we're going to improve that. This is how we're going to kind of take that forward.
I think that's so important that you have that forward view, that roadmap, that on those kind of quarterly, so the short to medium term, but also the longer term. We know in Cloud Success Navigator, you're working with managed service to put that roadmap together. And that, I'm sure, has like a ripple effect of this continued investment here.
Yeah, and there is a continuous investment with Oracle. You know, we are still looking at what haven't we switched on, and when could we do that, and when would be the right time across the organisation to land that change. So there's a lot of change that comes with Oracle, but you do have to be mindful of other change going around in the organisation because of that change fatigue and, you know, things potentially not landing as you want them to. But there's so much to get excited about in the future. I think the challenge is kind of almost putting the brakes on yourself a little bit and making sure you plan that in appropriately across the organisation and the other strategy that the university has for the next 2-3 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's something that just to keep with that subject in terms of how do you bring forward that future state? Because often in these types of programs, you know, there's kind of time creep where it's taken just a little bit too long. Because I think people generally can deal with change, but often it's the transitions, isn't it, going from A to B, which just takes so long. And what you describe in there is a really exciting example of how you've been able to bring the future forward, but safely and securely. So how have you been able to go around that and make it happen?
We're very early days, so it comes with its challenges. You know, there's always a competing priority to launch something else that's going on around the organisation in comparison to what you want to kind of drive through HCM. A prime example, though, is the benefits module. We're looking at implementing that. We didn't switch it on when we went live. It's something we're considering now. But it's when do we do that? And it's, you know, kind of liaising with our executive teams and senior teams to kind of sell the benefits of that, sell the user case, if you like, and what that's going to bring and how that's going to improve. We talked about data metrics, all that kind of stuff that will aid our decision making moving forward. To get that buy-in, it's a constant round of negotiation, persuasion, and influencing with your leadership team, and that has to be ongoing because there's always going to be competing priorities. But the benefits you can have from these innovations are huge.
Yeah.
To hear the Greenwich story there, that 5 years on and still new modules being released. I think you're saying
absolutely.
help desk and then supplier portal. I'm hoping that's an exciting thing. Colleagues at Salford saying, even 5 years, it's not one and done.
Absolutely not. So we've got quite an ambitious rolling programme. So like you say, we went live in May with the help desk, and that's great in terms of self-service. So we've got things called knowledge articles, which allow our staff the questions that you get asked every day in the people space, where staff can go and find that information, and it's at their fingertips. And that's really how we're working in a modern world, isn't it? Everything is mobile, and we're trying to respond to that, and that is what our digital enabling strategy responds to. And the thing about the kind of how do you keep going with it, it is that constant dialogue, and it is that constant managing of expectations, because sometimes the look and feel is different. So we've just moved to Redwood, and the look and feel is different, and there's some real positives with that. We've got a really great Oracle product team who work really closely with yourselves in order to kind of support the rollout of different switch-ons, and when we're doing things like the testing and patch testing, and just looking at what else we can do, and really it's an enabler. This enables us to make different decisions in terms of management. It enables our staff to get access to quicker information. So that in itself is really, really healthy and really helpful. And there's an appetite with those that work on this all the time. They're really passionate about what they do, and they're really committed to doing it well. And that is supported through the kind of strategic framework. That really helps. But that management of expectation is important, but it can also be really positive in that, as you say, like yourselves, when I started at Greenwich, we had the annual leave card and the wet signature, and we've got self-service now, and people can then use a knowledge article and say, how do I look at my annual leave, and what's the difference between that and the hours that are in the system, and that's your bank holiday. It's that kind of stuff that really just helps, and because we're in an age where the constant is change and the constant is digital enablement, we all walk around with a mobile phone, don't we? We all expect instant access to things. We're talking to that and we're responding to it, and that's what we're encouraging our students to do in terms of how they are digitally enabled, and looking at things like social mobility, and it speaks to that as well. So again, it's that constant, okay, what else can we do, and what should we prioritise? So, and sometimes the conversation is about those competing priorities, and which one kind of wins out in terms of kind of business prioritisation. But the appetite for that is huge, which we're really grateful for, and it has been a journey, and not all of it has been easy. There's no point in pretending it has been, and sometimes the realisation piece is that actually it isn't necessarily going to look and feel how you imagined it to be, and that management of expectation is important. But generally speaking, we're seeing it as an enabler, which is really helpful.
So one of the key things that colleagues, when I go around to different universities, will pick up is the challenge that you might get from trade unions. So how have you all been able to kind of engage in dialogue positively with your trade unions to make sure that you get a smooth transition from the old world to the new world? Let's start with yourself, Kirsty.
I think it's early engagement, isn't it? And it is about saying why you're changing. So what we're not doing is necessarily changing policy frameworks.
Yeah.
We obviously do that within a context of the changes in employment law, etc. But it's not about that. It's saying how it speaks to everything I've just said, that this is an enabler. It will make management tasks, some of those previously paper-driven, I want a change in contract and you send through 25 bits of paper. We don't have to do that anymore. So it's talking about how that will reduce time and increase effectiveness and access to information, which we share. We share people metrics, we don't hide them. So that's been a pretty positive journey that we've taken with them. And obviously unions hold mirrors up to you to ask you to think about things in a different way. That's a healthy part of a trade union relationship with any employer. So sometimes when you get feedback, you will look at, okay, is there a different way we could iterate this, and take that on board. And again, healthy debate, but generally speaking, they have come the journey with us.
Great. And from yourself, Di?
We again engaged with the TUs really early doors. We had a lot of good feedback from them about how they would like us to engage with their members. So we took a lot of that on board, but again, it was around the vision and being able to say, as Christy's talked to, we're going to save colleagues time, we're going to reduce the manual load, we're going to give those colleagues that are not desk-based access to services and transactional activity in their hand with their mobile. So we're opening the door for a lot more colleagues to be able to have that instant access to HR payroll services. So they've been very much on board and come on the journey with us. And again, it's part of that, that initial stakeholder impact that you do at the start of any project, and making sure that you've recognised that group and they can come along with you.
Yeah. And then you're obviously in the thick of this programme. So what kind of engagement and dialogue are you currently having?
Very similar in the sense that we're not necessarily changing anything that's huge policy, and where we are, we're engaging around those specific aspects.
Yeah.
So it's again just a sort of ongoing conversation. We're relatively early in relationship to that, and as I say, we're looking at it where there's a policy change or where there's a policy need as part of that conversation. So again, and actually they're a strong voice in part of some of our broader engagement anyway. So where we're doing whole events with professional services teams and other teams, they're actively part of those conversations as well. So there's a number of ways in which we're picking up on that.
I think it goes back to that transparency piece you were talking of earlier. What was really brave, your COO Robert choosing to say, we have all of these papers that were presented programme board about the reason to sign off for design. Why should we keep them? And I think you've taken that mindset from the beginning that those should be shared.
Yeah.
There should be professional services forums. But you spoke there about one of the things you've had is that academic advisory group. And I think uniquely, that was from even before an implementer was ever on board.
We've had that for, last 12 months or more. And we've built up that journey right the way along. And that's a regular group that we work with. And we take a temperature check. So again, we're being as much guided by what's coming up through their teams and what they're hearing and responding to what they need, as much as we're pushing out information. So they've been a really active engagement part. And we've got we've got academic representation on our board. So all of that from every level we're engaging with right away along the line. It's really valuable because they'll make you think about things in a slightly different way or spot things that you just hadn't thought of. And what I like about it is the fact that you assume something will be a big deal. And when you ask them, it isn't necessarily a big deal. So a lot of what you encounter when you're kind of going through the engagement is a lot of mythology about what people will or won't be worried about. And I'd say ask people and they'll tell you. And what we found is sometimes the things that you think will be really contentious actually aren't. And then sometimes the things that you didn't think wouldn't be are the things that actually trip you up. So the more you can share, the more you can share early, the more you ask instead of making assumptions, I think the better you'll be in the longer run. But and don't make the assumption just because someone tells you that's going to be contentious that it will or won't be. You might be surprised, which is wonderful and tricky at times, but that's part of what's nice about a programme like this and an organisation like Imperial College.
So just sticking with yourself, Emma, one of the big challenges that we have in digital transformation programmes is this kind of desire often just to replicate what you've currently got into the new system. And this whole kind of reprocessing the way business is done, especially those activities which pull across professional functions. And the concept of adopt and adapt. So adopting is what we kind of encourage, positively people to do. That's kind of my polite way of saying, this is the best way of doing it. This is how you should be doing it. But you will get organizational resistance or sometimes professional resistance from that. So what are you doing to kind of ensure that you're kind of staying true to that principle?
There's a few things on that. So I have to tell you our starting point in that we have one of the most customised e-business suites, and that's our starting point. So from our perspective, this is not an insignificant challenge that you're talking about. So we've been really crystal clear around what our intent is in terms of adopt and not adapt. Okay, so first and foremost, Part of that's about our partner, so I'm looking at Rich. Part of that's about holding us to account and drawing the line where we shouldn't be pushing it, and keeping that firm line for us. Part of it's around the mindset of the team and the way that the team's working. And I have to say that I'm incredibly lucky with the programme team I've got and the mindset. What they are pragmatic, forward-thinking, and they're always looking for what's the best way to do things in the simplest way possible, by and large. So actually, I think part of it's the way in which the people that we've got in the programme are thinking and approaching this. We also have governance around this. So we've got a business design authority. So again, you can wrap a certain amount of governance around those things where you can see that you're starting to go off track, and you do need that. And sometimes you need to just say, we're going to be pragmatic and we're going to compromise here. I think, again, you can get caught into a wave of perfection, and that's quite often what will drive you down a route of adapting where you could just adopt it. And that is a real challenge, because in an organisation where change hasn't always landed brilliantly in the past, people want it to be perfect, right? So it's got to be perfect, otherwise we're going to have a challenge at go live. What we're having to do is talk a lot about good enough. This is good enough. This is how it works. And that's not easy. That's not an easy message to land, particularly when, for people working in the programme, you know, this is a big deal for them. This is a big change for them, and they want this to be good. They want it to be successful. So that good enough is a hard message to land. Again, the way we're doing that is holding the line, and you're helping us do that, holding the line where we need to. But it's also about saying, this isn't going to be perfect, guys, and we know these things already, and we're telling you early. Now, the other challenge we have with this is everyone works differently at the moment. So right across the board, everyone's from a slightly different starting point. So again, we're going to have to talk to people from where they're starting from, and that's why we're looking to accelerate things like, you know, team change impact assessments, because we've got to talk to, okay, how do we help you to make this transition? Because do you know what, it is going to be standard and we're all going to do it the same way. But what does that mean for you? And that's why at the moment there's such a pull from the programme to understand, but the specifics, tell us the specifics. And we're trying our level best to keep that pace, because we need to help them through this transition and this journey. Because as you said at the outset, this isn't about the system. We can do that. We can do the technology. We can do the implementation. We need to make sure that this lands positively. We need to make sure it lands safely. And actually, just listening to you guys talk about that continuous improvement and the competing priorities, we want to make sure we keep progressing. And if we're in a sea of competing priorities and actually this doesn't land well, we'll find it much harder to keep that continuous improvement journey. So I'm listening to you very closely as you talk about this, and I'm thinking about this as well. Exactly.
And there are many things which make each of your universities unique, and the experience of your students unique. But paying an invoice is not it. So, that's
now.
interesting debate.
It does speak to your point, though, about it may not be perfect, but it's going to be a lot better. And actually, as we move forward and there's more releases, and we look at different things that we can add in terms of usability of the modules, etc., it becomes nearer to that expectation. It's just not instant. And I think, to your point about the pressure to adapt was really quite strong when we started to work on this, and when we worked on HCM, we were the first to work together on this, weren't we? And there was pressure, and we're a post-92 university, and some of our T's and C's are quite complex, and trying to map those across, and at times, to your point about trying to be perfect and replicate was really one of our challenges. And now it's going to be a lot easier to adopt, because as we've grown, so has Oracle, and so that's we're able to speak more to that kind of adopt position.
And that's one of the things we're using as well. So we're reminding the organisation, okay, this isn't perfect now, but the pace of change is such that we will get there. And
Absolutely.
I I think that's one of the benefits of moving to the cloud, is the fact you can say that. Whereas I think when you're on-prem, it is hard, it is slow, it is a grind to change things and adapt things. And of course, that's not going to be the case. So building confidence around the fact that when we say we can continue to improve, we really can, I think that's going to really help with momentum as well as we go on.
Great, Rich.
No, I think there's a brilliant point there on sometimes it can feel we're going against the grain of the sector, that, the tradition is we do customise because, hey, we're special. And, I've been personally guilty in the sector of building some spaceships on occasion. But you do have to hold that line. So back to that point, it takes a maturity of your team to read. And you're right, I echo, you've got a brilliant programme team. But if we as your partner say, here's an impact statement saying we shouldn't increase scope, there is unnecessary adaptation here that we should hold the line. But it takes then almost a change in culture to say, okay, we'll listen, we need to listen. And even for all the reasons of 25 years of an e-business suite customization, it's so easy to forget, isn't it? That if we go and repeat the mistakes of old and carry on customizing, short term, great, long term, not so. So it's a really interesting point of how do you set a different culture within a program team that wider university may not be used to working at quite that gear? No easy question.
I'll take that one first.
Take that bullet first.
I'll take that one. For us, it was a relatively straightforward one. We had a previous system for 20 plus years, which we had customised to the hilt, to the point where we got to a place where we could no longer do the annual patches because they were like a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
So things started to break and, you need sticking plaster and scaffolding. And, the reality was there were a couple of occasions with that previous system where we very nearly didn't pay people. So it was a very easy sell when we moved to Oracle to say, remember what happened with that?
Yeah.
That's why we're not doing this. And we really just held the line and kind of positioned it. If you start customizing, we're going down the paths of old and we're going to end up in the same position. We don't want that. We can't risk that. So therefore, this is the approach that we're taking. And it gets hearts and minds in the right place.
Yeah. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about how there's the bottom up from the team and the program team all pointing in that direction, but also the execs down, holding that line. And I remember the VC here at Greenwich, not just sitting at the back of a steerco, but actively driving that steerco to those. And I don't think that's too dim a distant memory, but
not at all, and still does, and it's still, it's still at the forefront of conversation in terms of that, that change piece and driving forward. And when we started this journey, we had a Deputy Vice Chancellor as the chair of our kind of steering group, and representation from pretty much across all of the exec, to make sure that journey was being led from the top. And I think it's then about what we're doing now is working with line managers, academic portfolio leads, our academic colleagues to think about how can you use this to enable you in your day-to-day. But in terms of that kind of rolling programme of plan change, then we still very much are talking to those same people in terms of the kind of strategic piece. And we also have operational and strategic governance, so it speaks to both. And so to the piece about culture change, I don't know if we're going to go on to that or we need to move on. The piece about culture change is getting people to think about it as not just a system, but a more effective way of working, a way of joining up together a whole host of different approaches, the kind of the benefit of SEL. And that, I guess, in terms of learning at the start of the journey is, I think, something we might have put a bit more emphasis on in terms of the culture change piece, not just the systems change piece. So there was a bit of learning for us from that kind of initial phase that I think we picked up, but never at any point have we not had that kind of leadership oversight and support, really, which has been massively helpful all the way through.
So through your ongoing journey in the cloud, what have you kind of put in place to ensure that you can cope with that cultural change alongside the kind of the quarterly updates and that constant innovation that's coming through?
I think apart from the mechanisms that I've just spoken to, we also go out and talk to our management senior teams through. We have a business partnering model, so both within our finance team and within the people directorate. So we go out and we support through that in terms of what that will mean, so that it's a bit being ahead of the change. So, we are going to be doing this, so the look and feel is going to be different, but this means it will enable you to do. So we make sure but again, that piece about transparency and being realistic, this is what it's going to look like, and this is how it's going to help you. This is what it's not going to do.
Yeah.
And we've also integrated how we work digitally in our line management training, in our onboarding, approach to onboarding, and in our approach to management induction, so that it's not just this is our vision, but these are the pragmatic of how you do stuff around here to enable you to manage and lead. And if you're an academic, that you're focusing on your research or your pastoral care for your students, you're not thinking you have to submit 25 forms to get a day off. So I think it's through those different mechanisms that we've attempted to do that. And I think it is temperature checking. We do staff surveys, we do pulse surveys, we get anecdotal feedback. We're able, so from the help desk, for example, we're able to draw down metrics in terms of the amount of usage we get in terms of our knowledge articles, how many queries we get in a month. So we're able to, and where the demand is coming in from which part of the organisation. So all of that gets fed through that kind of governance framework that allows for information and decision making at those different kinds of levels. I'm not sure if I've answered that, but that's what we do.
So, Di, these programs of change are really difficult things to do, aren't they? And to be part of, they can be quite...
We're turning into therapy now. The Namos sofas now, the Freudian.
And, but listeners out there, here you've got at least to that point of go live and a bit beyond. So looking back, if you were starting, for anyone listening out there who's starting this journey, and you had a bit of advice you want to share with them. And of course they're going to start and do it. Of course, we're embracing everybody. Yeah. What's the best thing that you could kind of give to them in terms of a piece of advice that will help them on that journey?
Gosh, I think in terms of the best thing you can do throughout the programme is be kind to yourselves. I think it's a difficult piece of work. It's a very intense piece of work. It's tiring, and it will stretch you and take you well out of your comfort zone. But the rewards are fantastic. So I think it's throughout the process making sure, and from my experience, certainly we made sure that we had, safe spaces for the project team where everyone could come together and have a bit of a rant and a bit of a therapy sesh, and give them kind of that psychological safety that was okay, and not letting the side down. So that was really important. But there's other things as well that you kind of look back on with hindsight and think we should have really done that and thought about that at the start. After we got very close to going live and suddenly realised we haven't got any managed services after we go live, and I don't think we've got the skills yet to support this beast of a system. So again, it's using networks at the start of the process to really understand those lessons learned before you jump into your programme, which we perhaps didn't do as well as we could have done. But you come through it in the end, and we got to where we were. So, yeah, I think it's creating that kind of safe space for your team, making sure the team can be effective, but also doing your networking and your research before you start to make sure you've got all the boxes ticked in that business case, so you're not going back with the begging bowl a couple of months before go live because you've realised you've missed something.
Yeah, and we've heard great stories over a number of years from Greenwich at the Higher Education Innovation Forum, where we share case studies and lessons learned and connect people together, those starting and those kind of midway through to learn. What would you share with our listeners today in terms of any lessons that they might want to think about?
This is one that I can share with a phone a friend for. There's so much. I think be prepared, be transparent, clearly do your homework beforehand to make sure you've got your strategic level engagement. That's absolutely critical. Be passionate and be determined. And there are going to be bumps in the road. Learn from them. There is a network, as you've alluded to, of other institutions that have taken this journey. Talk to them, learn from them. We did go out and talk to other institutions to see what we could learn from them, different HAIs, see what we could learn from them. Form that partnership. So what we did in the journey with Namos as our support partner was we did enter into the proper spirit of partnership and healthy, honest debate about what would and wouldn't work. Learn. Don't be frightened for something to go wrong, and look at what else you can do differently. So we had some of that learning with some of our modules. You know, we had to kind of roll things back and look at it again. So don't be frightened to do it. Keep your senior stakeholders engaged all the way through, and you will be supported through the journey.
I mean, one thing that I often share with organisations starting their journey is about the need to have passion and excitement about
Without a doubt.
And, you know, the three of you have brought that today and demonstrated, even though you're at different stages of that journey, you can get to the end point and live through it, but you've still maintained that sense of excitement, which is so important to have that infecting the rest of the organisation, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that is also about, and it speaks to what you've both said about your teams.
Yeah.
You know, the project team that started this journey, we're really delighted to have the opportunity for the investment, and with that has grown an increasing skill base. So we've really invested in developing our own team, and they do a great job continuing to develop the Oracle product and working with yourselves. And that passion was without doubt there. There was an absolute drive and determination. We started this journey in lockdown, and we had a team that were going from e-business to the cloud product in lockdown and doing this from their dining rooms, their bedrooms. And so that commitment was to the end product and what that would mean for the university and the staff, and that we wouldn't have achieved what we did without that passion and commitment from the staff themselves who were involved. So leadership support is absolutely critical without a doubt, but the passion and determination and commitment of the teams that actually make this happen, you can't do it without that, and they were brilliant.
And I'm seeing just to add to that, there's a real growing sense of pride in my team. You can see it, and it's a really nice thing, because the start point was cynicism to some extent about the degree to which we could deliver the level of change or transformation that we're going to deliver. And to see that pride going up is actually a really nice feeling. And I would add to everything that you've said, don't give up. Yeah. Okay. So it's so, and I say this to myself,
the small wins.
right? Yeah. And I say this to myself because you will hit walls. We talk a lot about the theory of change and all the things that you can do, but you know what? It's just hard work, right? And so you just have to keep going relentlessly, push forward, and don't give up at all. And be pragmatic, right? Some of the best conversations that actually unblock things is those pragmatic conversations that says, yeah, in a perfect world, we do X, Y, and Z, but you know what? A, B's okay. And we can do that. So I think be pragmatic, don't give up, and be proud. You know, we're going to do great things, and I'm so excited. And if any of my team watching, I'm so proud of you. So, you know, share those things and build that enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think they're great lessons to be learned. And I think we should all have over our mirrors or monitors, don't give up.
I'm a big Ted Lasso fan, so I literally have Believe in my living room.
So we walked into the project room day one.
There was a Believe.
Believe.
Love it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Richard, over to you.
Such fantastic perspectives. And as Leitham said there, from so many different angles. I think no doubt there's questions coming from the floor. I just want to show everyone that this conversation isn't one and done and we disappear for all the reasons that our panellists here have said about. There is a user community here. So anything that's been put into the chat, any questions that you have, and myself, Leitham, or the panel will be sure to get back to you on that. Without wishing to wrap up actually on time,
Wow, that's
I know.
pretty cool, isn't it?
Not like every Namos program, I should say. Look, it just leaves me to thank everyone who tuned in, everyone who gave up into their afternoon, everyone who's posted things on the chat to say thank you. Most importantly, to say thank you to our panelists, each with those perspectives. There is so many pearls of wisdom that I'm sure people will grab you at conferences and other HE user community events to delve into further. And finally, thank you to Lethan for hosting us today.
My pleasure.
And a very special thanks to Greenwich for hosting us on the beautiful campus here. Just
Thank
south
you.
of the
Great to have you all here. Great to have a conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.